The desert wind carried secrets across Groom Lake at 3:47 hours, stirring dust devils that danced between the shadows of aircraft that officially didn't exist. In the pre-dawn darkness, a figure emerged from the restricted hangar bay, her flight suit crisp despite the Nevada heat that would soon turn the tarmac into a furnace. Captain Vega, Prism Kowalski adjusted her helmet visor, watching the horizon where stars still fought against the coming dawn. She had no idea that in 6 hours, she would become either a legend or a cautionary tale whispered in defense contractor boardrooms across the globe. The morning briefing had been routine until Marcus Thornfield arrived. The 43-year-old CEO of Apex Dynamics strode into the classified hangar with the confidence of a man who owned 3 aerospace companies and had personally funded half the experimental aircraft surrounding them. His tailored suit looked absurdly out of place among the grease-stained coveralls and flight gear, but his clearance level opened doors that most generals couldn't even see. Thornfield's company had developed the YF-23A Shadowhawk, a prototype that had cost taxpayers $400 million and existed in quantities of exactly one. Today, that prototype would face its first live evaluation against conventional aircraft. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Colonel Bradley Harrison, his weathered face betraying nothing as he gestured toward the assembled pilots. "Today we're conducting Exercise Mirror Shield. Our guest evaluator will be observing close formation tactics between the Shadowhawk and standard F-22 Raptors." His eyes found Prism in the back row. "Captain Kowalski, you'll be flying Raptor 3 in a 4-ship formation. Try to keep up." A ripple of barely suppressed laughter moved through the room. Prism had arrived at Nellie's 3 months ago with a reputation that preceded her like a storm front. Youngest female pilot to graduate top of her class from the weapons school, but also the officer who had been quietly reassigned after questioning a superior's judgment during a training exercise that had nearly cost 2 lives. The other pilots saw her as either a perfectionist or a problem child, depending on who was telling the story. Thornfield's gaze swept the room with the casual arrogance of someone accustomed to being the smartest person present. "I trust your people understand they're witnessing the future of air superiority," he said, his voice carrying just enough condescension to make several pilots exchange glances. "The Shadowhawk represents a quantum leap in stealth technology. Frankly, I'm curious to see how your conventional aircraft perform against next-generation capabilities." Colonel Harrison nodded diplomatically, but Prism caught the slight tightening around his eyes. She had learned to read such micro-expressions during her time in Afghanistan, where the difference between confidence and arrogance often meant the difference between coming home or coming home in a box. The morning sun climbed higher, painting the classified airfield in shades of amber and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out across the desert, its voice lost in the growing rumble of jet engines beginning their pre-flight sequences. Captain Vega Kowalski walked toward her F-22, unaware that she was about to rewrite the rules of aerial combat and teach a millionaire a lesson in humility that would echo through the halls of the Pentagon for decades to come. The classified hangar at Groom Lake hummed with activity as ground crews performed final checks on aircraft that existed only in the fevered imaginations of conspiracy theorists and the carefully redacted budgets of black projects. Prism's F-22 Raptor sat in its assigned position like a predator waiting to strike, its angular surfaces designed to scatter radar waves into harmless whispers. She ran her pre-flight inspection with the methodical precision of someone who had learned early that attention to detail was the difference between extraordinary pilots and dead ones. Raptor 3, this is tower control, crackled her radio as she settled into the cockpit. Weather conditions are optimal, winds light and variable. You are cleared for engine start in 15 minutes. The voice belonged to Master Sergeant Patricia Vance, a 20-year veteran who had guided more classified flights than most pilots would fly in their entire careers. Her tone carried the professional warmth of someone who understood that every takeoff was a small act of faith. Prism acknowledged the transmission while her fingers danced across the pre-flight checklist with practiced efficiency. Around her, the other three Raptors in the formation were coming alive, their Pratt and Whitney engines beginning to whisper promises of controlled violence. Flight lead was Major Derek Maverick Thompson, a 16-year veteran with more combat hours than most people had driving hours. Raptor 2 belonged to Captain James Bulldog Rodriguez, whose reputation for aggressive flying was matched only by his reputation for bringing everyone home. Raptor 4 was Captain Lisa Ghost Chen, a quiet professional whose precision in formation flying had earned her the grudging respect of pilots who still questioned whether women belonged in fighter cockpits. Across the tarmac, the Shadowhawk sat in its climate-controlled hangar like a jewel in a vault. The aircraft looked more like something that had crash-landed from the future than anything built by human hands. Its surfaces flowed together in curves that seemed to defy physics, painted in a matte gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Test pilot Colonel Nathan Reaper Blackwood had been hand-selected to fly the prototype. His 23 years of experience and Ph.D. in aeronautical engineering, making him the only pilot qualified to handle the revolutionary aircraft. Marcus Thornfield stood beside the Shadowhawk with the proprietary pride of a parent watching their child perform in a school play. His tablet displayed real-time telemetry from the prototype systems, streams of data that represented years of development and hundreds of millions of dollars in research. The Shadowhawk's revolutionary skin composition, he explained to Colonel Harrison, incorporates metamaterials that actively bend electromagnetic waves around the aircraft. It's not just stealth, it's practical invisibility. Colonel Harrison nodded politely while mentally calculating how many F-22s they could have purchased for the cost of the single prototype. His pragmatic mind appreciated innovation, but 40 years of military service had taught him that the best technology meant nothing without the right pilot flying it. "Your aircraft certainly looks impressive, Mr. Thornfield. I'm curious to see how it performs in a tactical environment." "Performance won't be an issue," Thornfield replied with the casual confidence of someone who had never had to trust his life to the equipment he designed. "The Shadowhawk's AI-assisted flight controls make it virtually pilot-proof. Colonel Blackwood is essentially along for the ride." He glanced toward the F-22s with the expression of someone watching horse-drawn carriages prepare to race sports cars. In Raptor 3's cockpit, Prism completed her systems checks and waited for the order to taxi. The morning light streamed through her canopy, illuminating instruments that had been state-of-the-art when she was still in high school. Her aircraft was 15 years old, a veteran of 3 combat deployments and countless training exercises. Every rivet and panel told a story of missions flown and battles won, of pilots who had trusted their lives to machines built by the lowest bidder and maintained by people who understood that failure wasn't an option. The radio crackled with the familiar litany of clearances and acknowledgments that preceded every flight. Somewhere in that electronic chatter was the voice of her wingman, her flight lead, her ground control, people who would help her navigate the next 2 hours of precisely choreographed violence in the sky. What none of them knew was that those 2 hours would fundamentally change how the Air Force thought about pilot training, aircraft development, and the dangerous hubris of assuming that newer always meant better. "Raptor Flight, this is Tower. You are cleared to taxi. Exercise mirror shield is now active. Good hunting." The words carried across the airfield with the weight of tradition, the same blessing that had sent pilots into battle since humans first figured out how to strap wings to their backs and chase glory across an endless sky. The F-22 Raptors taxied toward the active runway in a precise formation that spoke of countless hours of training and an understanding between pilots that transcended radio communication. Prism's aircraft rolled smoothly across the tarmac, its twin engines providing just enough thrust to overcome inertia, while she maintained perfect position relative to her flight lead. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of dawn and promising another scorching day in the Nevada desert. "Tower, Raptor Flight requesting clearance for takeoff." Major Thompson's voice carried the calm professionalism of someone who had made this call thousands of times before. His F-22 sat at the head of the formation, engines spooled up and ready to translate potential energy into kinetic reality. Behind him, The other three Raptors waited in perfect alignment, their pilots monitoring instruments and running final mental checks through procedures that had been drilled into muscle memory. Raptor flight, you are cleared for takeoff. Contact approach control on frequency 127.45 after departure. Weather conditions remain optimal. Master Sergeant Vance's voice held the same professional warmth it had carried for 2 decades of guiding pilots into an element that hadn't been designed for human beings. The four F-22s accelerated down the runway in sequence, each aircraft rotating precisely 15 seconds after the one ahead. Prism felt the familiar sensation of gravity surrendering to thrust as her Raptor lifted off, the ground falling away beneath her landing gear, in a sight that never lost its magic no matter how many times she experienced it. Her aircraft climbed steadily, systems operating within normal parameters, while she maintained formation position through subtle inputs on the stick and throttles. Raptor flight, turn left heading 270, climb and maintain flight level 250. The approach controller's voice guided them toward the designated training area where exercise mirror shield would unfold. The airspace over Groom Lake had been cleared of commercial traffic, creating a bubble of controlled sky where experimental aircraft could push the boundaries of physics without worrying about curious airline passengers with cameras. Behind them, the Shadowhawk was completing its own departure procedures. Colonel Blackwood ran through startup sequences that bore little resemblance to conventional aircraft, his hands dancing across touch screens and voice-activated controls that made the F-22's analog instruments look like artifacts from the Wright brothers' era. The prototype's engines, if they could be called engines, operated on principles that required security clearances just to understand. Plasma-assisted turbofans provided thrust, while electromagnetic field generators created a localized distortion that bent radar waves around the aircraft like water flowing around a stone. Marcus Thornfield monitored the prototype's departure from the control tower, his tablet displaying telemetry that painted the Shadowhawk as a ghost moving through digital space. Stealth signature is holding at near zero, he reported to Colonel Harrison with unconcealed satisfaction. Your pilots won't even know it's there until it's too late. Colonel Harrison watched the four F-22s climbing toward their assigned altitude, their contrails writing temporary stories across the desert sky. Mr. Thornfield, in my experience, it's dangerous to underestimate military pilots. They have a way of adapting to situations that engineers never anticipated. His words carried the weight of someone who had seen technology fail when human ingenuity succeeded, who understood that warfare was ultimately a contest between minds rather than machines. With respect, Colonel, this isn't about pilot skill, Thornfield replied, his attention focused on the data streams flowing across his tablet. The Shadowhawk represents a paradigm shift in aerial combat. Traditional tactics become irrelevant when your opponent can't see you coming. He spoke with the certainty of someone who had spent more time in boardrooms than cockpits, whose understanding of aerial combat came from computer simulations, rather than the visceral reality of pulling 9Gs while someone tried to kill you. At 25,000 feet, the four F-22s reached their assigned altitude and began configuring for the exercise. The morning sky stretched endlessly in all directions, a canvas of blue that would soon be painted with contrails, and the invisible signatures of aircraft pushing the boundaries of human achievement. Prism checked her position relative to the other Raptors, her aircraft maintaining formation through the unconscious muscle memory of hundreds of training flights. Raptor flight, this is Overlord. The exercise controller's voice crackled through their headsets. Exercise mirror shield is now active. Your mission is to maintain formation integrity while engaging a single adversary aircraft. Rules of engagement are visual identification required, simulated weapons only. Unknown aircraft will be approaching from the north. The words carried the familiar cadence of training exercises. But every pilot understood that today's simulation could become tomorrow's reality. The stage was set 25,000 feet above the Nevada desert, where million-dollar aircraft would dance a ballet of simulated violence, while engineers and generals watched from the ground. What none of them realized was that they were about to witness the moment when raw pilot skill collided with cutting-edge technology, when experience met innovation in a contest that would be studied and debated in military academies for decades to come. The Nevada sky at 25,000 feet held the crystalline clarity that only existed at the intersection of altitude and desert air, where the curvature of the earth became visible and the horizon stretched beyond the limits of human vision. Prism's F-22 flew in perfect formation with its three companions, their contrails writing temporary signatures across the blue canvas, while their pilots prepared for an exercise that would test the boundaries between proven technology and revolutionary innovation. Raptor flight, this is Overlord. The controller's voice carried the professional calm of someone managing a chess game played with million-dollar pieces. Unknown aircraft is now airborne and proceeding to the engagement area. Estimated time to contact is 12 minutes. Maintain current heading and altitude until advised. The words crackled through headsets worn by pilots who had trained for this moment their entire careers, though none of them fully understood what they were about to face. Major Thompson's voice came across the formation frequency with the casual authority of someone who had led flights through hostile airspace over Afghanistan and Iraq. Raptor flight. Let's review our tactical formation. We'll maintain combat spread with 2-mile spacing between elements. Maverick and Bulldog will take high cover. Ghost and Prism will maintain low position. When we make contact, we'll execute a pincer movement, standard doctrine for unknown aircraft encounters. The formation adjusted slightly as each pilot moved to their designated position, transforming from a tight show formation into a tactical spread designed to maximize mutual support while minimizing vulnerability to enemy fire. Prism's aircraft settled into position 2 miles south of Ghost's F-22, their altitude separation providing overlapping radar coverage of the airspace ahead. The mathematical precision of their positioning represented decades of tactical evolution, lessons learned from aerial combat dating back to the skis over Europe and the Pacific. Raptor 3, this is Raptor 4. Ghost's voice carried the subtle tension of someone preparing for combat, even simulated combat. How's your radar painting the search area? Lisa Chen had flown combat missions over Syria and possessed the situational awareness that came from operating in environments where the difference between exercise and reality was measured in milliseconds rather than minutes. Raptor 4. Raptor 3 shows clear scope out to maximum range, Prism replied, her eyes scanning the heads-up display that painted the surrounding airspace in shades of green and amber. Her AN/APG-77 radar was operating in search mode, its electronic beam sweeping through the sky ahead with the methodical precision of a lighthouse scanner. The system was capable of tracking multiple targets simultaneously while maintaining the aircraft's stealth profile, a technological marvel that had required years to perfect. 15 miles behind the F-22 formation, the Shadowhawk climbed through 20,000 feet with the otherworldly grace of something that defied conventional understanding of aerodynamics. Colonel Blackwood monitored systems that bore no resemblance to traditional aircraft controls, his hands resting lightly on interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. The prototype's revolutionary design incorporated technologies that wouldn't appear in production aircraft for another decade, assuming they ever left the classified world of black projects. Shadowhawk, this is Overlord. The controller's voice reached the prototype through communication systems that used quantum entanglement to prevent interception. You are cleared to begin your approach to the engagement area. Raptor flight is maintaining heading 270 at flight level 250. Your mission parameters remain unchanged. Demonstrate advanced stealth capabilities against conventional fourth-generation fighters. Colonel Blackwood acknowledged the transmission while monitoring displays that showed his aircraft as essentially invisible to conventional radar. The Shadowhawk's metamaterial skin was performing as designed, bending electromagnetic waves around the aircraft's profile and creating a signature smaller than that of a sparrow. Overlord, Shadowhawk shows optimal stealth performance, beginning approach to engagement area. His voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had test-flown experimental aircraft that existed at the bleeding edge of human technology. In the control tower at Groom Lake, Marcus Thornfield watched telemetry displays that painted the unfolding exercise in real-time data streams. His tablet showed the four F-22s as bright contacts maintaining formation, while the Shadowhawk appeared as little more than a ghost on the scope. Colonel Harrison, as you can see, the Raptor formation has no idea what's coming. Traditional radar technology is simply inadequate against next-generation stealth capabilities. Colonel Harrison studied the displays with the analytical mind of someone who had spent 4 decades evaluating military technology. His experience encompassed everything from the first stealth fighters to modern drone warfare, and he had learned to be skeptical of revolutionary claims until they proved themselves in operational conditions. Mr. Thornfield, impressive technology doesn't always translate to tactical advantage. Pilot skill and situational awareness have a way of compensating for technological disparities. The comment carried an edge that suggested Colonel Harrison had seen promising technologies fail when confronted with the unpredictable variables of human performance under stress. His weathered hands gestured toward the radar displays showing the four F-22s maintaining perfect formation. Those pilots have been flying together for 6 months. They understand each other's capabilities and limitations in ways that can't be programmed into a computer. Thornfield's expression suggested polite disagreement with someone who hadn't kept pace with technological advancement. Colonel, with respect, pilot intuition becomes irrelevant when the opposing aircraft is essentially invisible. The Shadowhawk isn't just stealthy. It's operating on principles that make conventional tactics obsolete. His words carried the casual arrogance of someone who believed that engineering could solve problems that had challenged military aviators since Lindbergh first crossed the Atlantic. 25,000 feet above their conversation, 8 pilots prepared for an encounter that would test not just their aircraft, but their understanding of aerial combat itself. The morning sun climbed higher, painting the desert landscape in harsh shadows, while the aircraft above wrote their stories across a sky that had witnessed countless exercises, but few that would be remembered decades later. The radar scope in Prism's F-22 remained stubbornly empty, as the four-ship formation maintained its search pattern over the restricted airspace of Nevada Test Range. Her AN/APG-77 system painted the surrounding sky in electronic detail, tracking everything from distant airline traffic to the occasional bird. But the mysterious adversary aircraft remained invisible to her sensors. The silence felt unnatural in an environment where radar contacts usually appeared long before visual identification became possible. Raptor flight This is Overlord. The exercise controller's voice carried a note of anticipation that suggested the engagement was about to begin. Unknown aircraft is now within the exercise area. Begin combat, spread, and prepare for contact. Remember, visual identification is required before any simulated weapons engagement. The transmission reminded all participants that despite the advanced technology surrounding them, the fundamental rules of aerial warfare still applied. Major Thompson's voice crackled across the formation frequency with the clipped precision of someone shifting from training mode to combat mindset. Raptor flight, let's extend our search pattern. Bulldog and I will take high cover at 30,000 feet. Ghost and Prism, maintain current altitude and begin a combat air patrol pattern. Keep your eyes open. If it's not showing up on radar, we'll have to find it the old-fashioned way. The formation began to separate as each element moved to its assigned position, transforming their tactical spread into a three-dimensional web designed to trap anything that entered their airspace. Prism's F-22 turned south, while Ghost's aircraft headed north, their flight paths creating a barrier that should detect any aircraft attempting to penetrate their defensive perimeter. The mathematical precision of their positioning represented decades of tactical evolution, but today they were facing an opponent that might have made those tactics obsolete overnight. Raptor 3, this is Raptor 4. Ghost's voice carried the subtle tension of someone hunting an invisible predator. I'm showing negative contact on all sensors. This thing is either not here yet, or it's using technology we haven't seen before. Lisa Chen had flown enough combat missions to trust her instincts when her instruments failed her. But today even her seasoned judgment was struggling to make sense of the electronic silence surrounding them. Prism acknowledged the transmission while scanning the sky ahead with Mark I eyeballs, the pilot's term for visual detection that had remained unchanged since the first aerial dogfights over Europe in 1916. Her F-22's canopy provided an unobstructed view of the Nevada landscape stretching endlessly in all directions, but the enemy aircraft remained as invisible to her eyes as it was to her radar. Raptor 4, Raptor 3 concurs. I'm starting to wonder if our mystery guest decided to stay home. The comment drew a brief chuckle from the formation, but the humor carried an edge of professional concern. Military pilots learned early to be wary of situations that defied explanation, particularly when those situations involved experimental aircraft designed by people with security clearances higher than most generals. The Nevada desert had witnessed enough classified tests to make even experienced aviators cautious about assumptions. 8 miles northeast of the F-22 formation, the Shadowhawk glided through the same airspace like a ghost made manifest. Colonel Blackwood monitored displays that showed his aircraft as completely invisible to the searching Raptors, their radar beams passing through his location, without registering so much as a flutter on their scopes. The prototype's metamaterial skin was performing beyond design specifications, creating a stealth signature that challenged fundamental assumptions about electromagnetic detection. Overlord, this is Shadowhawk. Colonel Blackwood's voice carried the calm satisfaction of someone whose faith in technology was being vindicated. I'm currently 8 miles northeast of the Raptor Formation at their 11 o'clock position. They're showing no awareness of my presence despite optimal positioning for radar detection. Request permission to begin the demonstration phase. His words represented more than tactical communication. They were evidence that revolutionary technology was performing exactly as promised. The controller's response came immediately, carrying the authority of someone managing an exercise that would influence defense spending for the next decade. Shadowhawk, you are cleared to begin demonstration phase. Maintain safe separation from all Raptor aircraft. Remember, this is a demonstration of stealth capabilities, not an engagement. The transmission emphasized safety protocols that applied even to simulated combat, recognizing that experimental aircraft and standard fighters occupied different universes of performance and predictability. In the control tower, Marcus Thornfield watched the unfolding demonstration with the satisfaction of someone whose vision was being validated in real time. His tablet displayed the Shadowhawk's position relative to the 4 F-22s, painting a picture that would have been impossible just 5 years earlier. Colonel Harrison, as you can see, the Raptor formation is completely unaware of the Shadowhawk's presence. Traditional air defense concepts become meaningless when stealth technology reaches this level of sophistication. Colonel Harrison studied the displays with growing unease, his military instincts warning him that situations which seemed too good to be true usually were. His 4 decades of experience had taught him to be suspicious of technology that promised to revolutionize warfare overnight, particularly when that technology had been developed in isolation from operational realities. Mr. Thornfield, I'll admit your aircraft is impressive. But combat effectiveness involves more than just staying hidden. Eventually, you have to reveal yourself to engage the enemy. The observation carried implications that neither man fully appreciated, but that would become critically important in the minutes ahead, as the demonstration phase gave way to something that would challenge everything both men thought they knew about aerial combat. The Shadowhawk drifted through the Nevada sky like a specter, its presence undetected by 4 of the most sophisticated fighter aircraft ever built. Colonel Blackwood maintained a perfect position 3 miles northeast of the F-22 formation, close enough to demonstrate the prototype's revolutionary stealth capabilities, while remaining far enough away to avoid any possibility of collision. His instruments showed the Raptors continuing their search pattern, their radar beams passing harmlessly around his aircraft like water flowing around a stone. Raptor flight, this is Overlord. The controller's voice carried a note of professional curiosity as the exercise entered its critical phase. Continue your search pattern. The unknown aircraft is definitely in your area of operations. The transmission contained an implicit challenge. Find an aircraft that your instruments insist doesn't exist, using nothing more than eyes and intuition that had served military aviators since the dawn of flight. Major Thompson's frustration was beginning to show in his radio transmissions. The calm professionalism of an experienced flight leader starting to crack under the pressure of hunting an invisible adversary. Raptor flight. Let's expand our search radius. Whatever we're looking for is either extremely small or using stealth technology beyond anything in our intelligence briefs. Maintain visual scanning protocols and report any anomalies, no matter how minor. The four F-22s began a complex weaving pattern designed to maximize their visual coverage of the surrounding airspace while maintaining mutual support positions. Prism found herself flying a racetrack pattern that covered the southern sector of their assigned area, her eyes constantly scanning the brilliant blue sky for anything that shouldn't be there. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly below, its harsh beauty providing a stark backdrop for an exercise that was rapidly becoming something more than routine training. Raptor 3, this is Raptor 2. Bulldog's voice carried the edge of someone whose competitive nature was being challenged by an unseen opponent. I'm starting to think our mystery guest is playing games with us. No aircraft can be this invisible unless it's using technology that isn't supposed to exist yet. James Rodriguez had flown enough combat missions to trust his instincts when conventional tactics failed. But today, even his seasoned judgment was struggling against an opponent that defied detection. Prism acknowledged the transmission while maintaining her visual scanning pattern, her eyes moving in the methodical grid that had been drilled into every military pilot since World War II. The technique was as old as aerial combat itself, but it remained the final defense against opponents who had defeated electronic detection. Raptor 2, Raptor 3 concurs. I'm beginning to wonder if we're chasing a ghost. Her words carried more truth than she realized. The Shadowhawk continued its demonstration orbit, Colonel Blackwood monitoring systems, that painted his aircraft as virtually non-existent to conventional detection methods. The prototype's quantum radar absorption matrix was performing flawlessly, its metamaterial surface bending electromagnetic waves in ways that challenged fundamental principles of physics. Every scan from the searching F-22s passed through his position without registering even a whisper of return signal. Overlord, this is Shadowhawk, Colonel Blackwood reported with the satisfaction of someone whose faith in advanced technology was being vindicated minute by minute. Continuing demonstration orbit at 3 miles northeast of Raptor Formation. Stealth systems are performing at maximum efficiency. The Raptors show no indication of my presence despite optimal positioning for radar detection. His calm voice carried implications that would reshape defense planning for the next generation of aerial warfare. In the control tower, Marcus Thornfield studied telemetry displays that validated every claim he had made about the Shadowhawk's revolutionary capabilities. His tablet showed the prototype maintaining perfect stealth profile, while 4 of the world's most advanced fighters searched in vain for any trace of its existence. Colonel Harrison, I believe we're witnessing the obsolescence of conventional air defense. When stealth technology reaches this level of sophistication, traditional tactics become irrelevant. Colonel Harrison watched the unfolding demonstration with growing concern, his military experience warning him that exercises which proceeded too smoothly often contained hidden dangers. His weathered hands gestured toward the radar displays showing the 4 F-22s maintaining their fruitless search pattern. Mr. Thornfield, your aircraft certainly demonstrates impressive stealth capabilities. But combat isn't just about hiding. Eventually, you have to engage the enemy. How does the Shadowhawk perform when it has to reveal itself? The question carried implications that would prove prophetic in the minutes ahead. As the demonstration phase began to give way to something that would test not just stealth technology, but the fundamental assumptions underlying modern aerial warfare. Thornfield's confident smile suggested he had anticipated the question and looked forward to providing an answer that would eliminate any doubts about his aircraft's capabilities. Colonel, the Shadowhawk doesn't need to reveal itself in the traditional sense, Thornfield replied with the casual certainty of someone who had spent millions developing technology that redefined possibility. Advanced fire control systems allow engagement at ranges where visual identification becomes irrelevant. The enemy never sees what killed them. His words carried the chilling precision of someone who had reduced warfare to an engineering problem that could be solved through superior technology and unlimited funding. 25,000 feet above their conversation, pilots continued searching for an opponent that existed at the intersection of theoretical physics and practical engineering, unaware that they were participating in an exercise that would fundamentally change how the military thought about the relationship between human skill and technological advantage. The F-22 formation had been searching for 23 minutes when Prism noticed the anomaly that would change everything. It wasn't something her radar detected or her electronic systems identified. It was a shadow that shouldn't have existed, a barely perceptible darkness against the brilliant blue sky that registered more as intuition than observation. Her eyes tracked the anomaly as it moved through her peripheral vision. too subtle for conscious recognition, but persistent enough to trigger instincts honed by hundreds of hours in hostile airspace. Raptor flight, this is Raptor 3. Prism's voice carried the calm professionalism of someone who had learned to trust subtle indicators that others might dismiss. I have a possible visual contact bearing 030, range approximately 4 miles. Object appears to be aircraft-sized but showing no radar signature. Investigating. Her transmission brought immediate attention from the other members of the formation, their search patterns shifting to converge on her reported contact. Major Thompson's response came immediately, his voice carrying the heightened alertness of a flight leader whose formation might have found their quarry. Raptor 3, this is lead. Confirm you have visual contact with unknown aircraft. Bulldog and I are moving to support your position. Ghost, maintain high cover and prepare for multiple threats. The tactical radio chatter reflected years of training in air-to-air combat, but today they were facing an opponent that challenged conventional doctrine. Prism adjusted her F-22s heading to close on the anomaly, her aircraft's powerful engines providing the thrust needed to intercept a target that seemed to drift through the sky with impossible grace. As the range decreased, the shadow resolved into something that defied easy categorization, an aircraft that seemed more grown than built, its surfaces flowing together in curves that challenged human understanding of aerodynamics. Raptor flight. I have visual confirmation of unknown aircraft. Configuration unlike any known type. Appears to be single-seat fighter, approximately F-22 sized but using unconventional design principles. The Shadowhawk's advantage disappeared the moment Prism's eyes locked onto its position, transforming the demonstration from a technological showcase into something approaching actual aerial combat. Colonel Blackwood realized his invisibility had been compromised through the oldest form of detection known to military aviation, a pilot's trained eye identifying something that didn't belong in the sky. Overlord. This is Shadowhawk. It appears one of the Raptor pilots has achieved visual contact. Request instructions for continuation of demonstration. The controller's response came after a pause that suggested hasty consultation with higher authorities who had not anticipated this development. Shadowhawk, continue demonstration as planned. Raptor flight. You are cleared to maintain visual contact, but do not close to less than 1 mile separation. This remains a controlled exercise. The transmission attempted to maintain the pretense of routine training, but every pilot understood that visual contact had fundamentally changed the dynamics of their encounter. Raptor 3, this is Raptor 4. Ghost's voice carried a note of professional admiration as she observed Prism's intercept from high cover. Nice eyes, Prism. I'm showing the contact on my scope now that you've pointed it out, but it's barely registering. Whatever that thing is, it's using stealth technology beyond anything in our intelligence briefs. The acknowledgement from an experienced combat pilot represented the first crack in the assumption that superior technology automatically conferred tactical advantage. In the control tower, Marcus Thornfield's expression shifted from confidence to concern as his tablet displayed the four F-22s converging on the Shadowhawk's position. The prototype stealth advantage had evaporated the moment visual contact was established, transforming the demonstration from a showcase of revolutionary technology into something resembling actual aerial combat. "This is an unexpected development," he admitted to Colonel Harrison, his voice carrying the first note of uncertainty since the exercise began. Colonel Harrison studied the tactical display with the analytical mind of someone who had witnessed the collision between theory and reality countless times throughout his career. His experience suggested that exercises which deviated from script often revealed truths that controlled demonstrations missed entirely. "Mr. Thornfield, in my experience, the most valuable lessons come from situations that don't proceed according to plan. Let's see how your pilot and aircraft perform when they can't rely on stealth alone." The comment proved more prophetic than either man realized, as the demonstration began evolving into something that would test not just advanced technology, but the fundamental relationship between human intuition and mechanical capability. 25,000 feet above the Nevada desert, 5 pilots prepared for an encounter that would challenge everything they thought they knew about aerial warfare, while validating lessons that stretched back to the first dogfights over the Western Front. Prism's F-22 closed steadily on the Shadowhawk, her aircraft's conventional design providing a stark contrast to the revolutionary prototype that had dominated the exercise, until visual contact changed everything. The morning sun highlighted both aircraft as they maneuvered through the clear desert air, writing contrails that would fade long before their encounter was forgotten by those who witnessed it from the ground and lived to study its implications. The moment visual contact was established, the exercise transformed from a technological demonstration into something approaching genuine aerial combat. Prism's F-22 closed steadily on the Shadowhawk, while the other 3 Raptors moved to support positions, their formation adapting with the fluid precision of pilots who had trained together, until individual actions became collective instinct. The prototype's stealth advantage had evaporated, but Colonel Blackwood possessed other capabilities that would soon test the conventional aircraft in ways their designers never anticipated. "Shadowhawk, this is Overlord." The controller's voice carried new urgency as the demonstration entered uncharted territory. "You are cleared to demonstrate full performance capabilities. Repeat, you are cleared for full performance demonstration within safety parameters." The transmission gave Colonel Blackwood permission to reveal capabilities that had been classified beyond the clearance level of most generals, technologies that existed at the intersection of theoretical physics and practical engineering. Colonel Blackwood acknowledged the transmission while his hands moved across control surfaces that bore no resemblance to conventional aircraft systems. The Shadowhawk's revolutionary flight controls responded to neural interfaces that translated thought into action faster than